What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the PHNX Mercury podcast. I'm your host, Erika Lee Day. I'm joined by QB1 on and off the field, Stephen PridGeon-Garner. Stephen, it's been a little while. We're back to the way things used to be, back with you in Chicago, me in my bedroom. It's like just kind of like old times. It's kind of fun. I'm excited.
Sometimes you got to restore that feeling a little bit before we ramp back up as the season nears. So I'm looking forward to talking some ball today, though, for sure. How you doing?
Good. Like I said, just returning to our roots a little bit. We got Shane behind the Mac running the X's and O's today. But then also we got a special guest joined today by Mr. Patrick Brown himself. I guess senior editor for basketball.com.au. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you. Stephen and I, we've spent so much time in the offseason talking about some of these bigger name acquisitions, Alyssa Thomas, Satu Sabali. Honestly, I could go on and on. Even Sammy Whitcomb is in on that list. But there are some unique training camp opportunities for the Phoenix Mercury this year. And so we wanted to get Patrick on here. He has a really unique perspective with Australian basketballers. And I just think that he'll be able to offer us some insight that we wouldn't otherwise have into some foreign ball. So I'm really, really excited to have both of you on the show to talk ball today. Did I say Peter Brown?
No,
I didn't say Peter.
There you go. There you go. You got it. You got it.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I've always wanted to be a Patrick. That's fine.
We can call you every P name under the sun. So, next time you come on the show, just know that I'm going to call you Paul. So.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well, I'm in a different time zone, completely different time zone, so it's totally fine. My name will change when I cross the international date line.
Yeah. See, I'm glad you agreed to it. That my shenanigans are fluid on this show, so you have to agree to just a little bit of them when you come on here.
Totally fine. It can be loose as we need to.
Well, I mean, I want to kind of let Stephen get started because I think Stephen. I was telling Stephen earlier today. I think you guys are going to speak a very similar language in regards to basketball, and I'm excited to be just a fly on the wall, just listening to you guys talk ball a little bit. So, Stephen, without further ado, if you kind of want to take us away.
Yeah, for sure. So we can kind of start. Obviously, the hidden gem that we think is going to kind of come to fruition in favor of the Mercury this upcoming season is the one and only Shyla Heal, aka Shy. You've had a lot of time spent with her in close proximity, but also just kind of keeping tabs on her and her international performances over the last handful of years. Obviously, Shyla was drafted by the Chicago Sky in 2021, number 8 overall pick in that draft. Things did not pan out quite with that team in particular. And here she is on kind of a redemption course and has found herself with another opportunity, this time with the Mercury. So I guess just kind of give us a little bit of a background to who Shyla Heal is, and just generally what have been your assessments of her growth up until this point.
That's well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. When the note dropped in to have a chat about certainly Shy and other WNBA Australian players, I thought, why not? I'd come on and have a great chat. She's put the work in since being drafted. Obviously, as you mentioned, it didn't quite work out her first go around, but she's most definitely been working on her game. Last year for Sydney Comets in the NBL 1, she played 10 games for the club and was rock solid. I'm a fan. She's not only a great baller, but an equally impressive human. So from my perspective, her ability to play, but also be a great teammate and fit in from a cultural perspective, for me is always going to be a benefit for any club that she signs. So she started out as an Australian prodigy, played her first senior professional game at 14. So there's a long history of the Heals in Australian basketball. I'm pretty sure that most people that are familiar with Shy know that her father is Shane, played for the Boomers, one of Australia's greatest ever players, could definitely shoot. And I think her time with her dad on the practice floor has certainly helped her game and her ability to obviously knock down from long range, but also create her own shot. So from my perspective, she puts the work in. She works really hard. Obviously, she's traveled to Europe, a couple of opportunities in Europe, came back for the WNBL, and then back into the NBL 1 to keep sort of the her game going for that period of time, and then went back to Turkey after competing for the Sydney Comets in NBL 1 and put up some really solid numbers. And I think she's put herself in a position to really give the coaches a tough decision about who they want in their backcourt in 2025.
For sure. And if I'm not mistaken, you spent time coaching with the Comets as well, correct?
Sure. I'm still a Comets coach now. I coach I'm a head coach of our women's youth league team, which is 17 to 22. And then the next program up is NBL 1. So I've got a couple of kids in my youth league program that are two-way players for NBL 1. And our NBL 1 team is essentially, or the NBL 1 competition in Australia is similar to sort of the G League in the US, where NBL players or WNBL players move back into the NBL 1 program in the off season to keep their game sharp, but then also work on opportunities to get to the next level for some of the younger players. So for us, the NBL 1 season started last week. It goes for about 3 or 4 months into the Australian winter, and then we kick back into the WNBL and NBL season. So I'm an assistant coach on our NBL 1 side and head coach on the youth league side. So at Sydney Comets, we're trying to build a program of a senior women program to give young athletes a pathway to the next level in their career. And Shy coming back in 2024 to compete at that level only helps our younger kids develop their games. Going up against someone who can really play ball is great for their career development. So from my perspective, having a blend of great ballers mixed with some young talent inside certainly our program, and there's many programs here in Australia that do similar, is why I think we're producing some pretty extraordinary talent that is obviously making its way into the WNBA.
For sure. And I think I'm glad you mentioned your Comets ties, because I had a quick question about her last season spent with you all in particular. What was it about her game that stood out to you as something that you could potentially see translating well to other international play, i.e. in the Turkish league that she spent time in, and naturally also garner the attention in terms of attracting another WNBA team to see a vision of her with their roster?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think I'll start with leadership. Whenever she's on the floor, you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get a player that most certainly knows how to run the offense. So at the 1, she has the ability to create her own shot. She has the ability to get us into our offense. She has the ability to shoot the ball and keep people involved across the board. I think probably the one great example was in the middle of July. We had a back-to-back weekend doubleheader, so a Saturday and Sunday game, both away on the road. We went out to a regional center in the Greater Sydney area called Penrith. It's about an hour away. not too far for a drive. Obviously, all the players get themselves there. There's no team bus required. She had 50. And then the following day, we had a road trip to Canberra, and those familiar with Australia would know that Canberra is probably about maybe 4 hours on the bus. So the very next day, she had another 50. So, back-to-back 50s on the road in crunch time for us, qualifying for the playoffs. She shot over 50% for both games combined, 8 for 16 for 3. It's tough. That's a tough road trip back to back, 24 hours, dropping 100 points in 2 ball games. I think is the perfect example of her ability to get it done under pressure. So from my perspective, her ability to knock down the 3 ball, create for her teammates, and lead a group of women on a common goal, for me is rare. Not too many people can score back-to-back 50s on the road in the crunch in what is Australia's second toughest basketball competition. So for me, that's certainly the highlight. But what was pretty special about that weekend is her teammates were really rooting for her as well, right? So it wasn't Shy just out there trying to get her own. It was a group of tough players trying to qualify for the playoffs, and knowing that someone that can score the ball was scoring the ball. So they certainly rallied in around her and through their support behind her. Not necessarily trying to get her to the 50, but making sure they were putting her in the right spots to get open shots. So that just tells me that she has the ability to bring people together, and if she's on a roll, she gets on a roll, and that was a pretty special weekend, I think, for us as a group.
Peter, I'm from Chicago. I'm not working in Phoenix. I'm in Chicago now on a little vacation. We have an endearing term that we have for ballers that have the type of drive and play with the type of urgency that Shyla does. We call them dogs.
Yeah.
And she's very much one of those.
Yeah.
I think that maybe one of the things that stands out most to me on film, and you kind of hinted at it already, and I would love for you to go into more detail on it, especially as a lead guard, even if scoring might be your best trait in terms of what you bring to the court, you still have point guard duties to tend to on a possession by possession basis. Can you speak to how her day-to-day process allows for her to uplift the confidence of her teammates over the course of practice, yet alone in games, and how she consistently finds ways to get more out of her teammates?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of young point guards struggle with that ability to score the ball, but also facilitate. And for me, it's why it's one of the toughest positions to play in basketball. Is how do you score the ball, but also make sure you keep your teammates involved as much as you can. And it's her ability to organize. So making sure that we're in our stuff and shooting in the flow of the offense is pretty crucial. So she puts the work in. She's got great handles. Her ability to get to the right spot at the right time, make the right play when you need to make the right play. It's just really tough as a scoring point guard, as you guys would know. Is when do you push and when do you play? I guess is probably the best way to do it. But I found she very rarely took shots out of the flow. So our team is pretty much the same size 1 through 5, and it's a similar challenge for us this year. We don't have a tremendous amount of size in our backcourt, so we've got the ability to switch 1 through 4. So on the defensive side of the ball, making sure that the right reads are being made. We get out into transition. She attacks from either the top on a high pick and roll. Her ability to come off the high pick and roll and shoot that pull up 3 is pretty unique in basketball, right? So there's a lot of guards that like to get downhill out of that spot, and she can do that as well. but that 30 to 35 foot high pick and roll where you can just turn the corner and hit that pull up if you're open is where I think she shoots in the flow of the offense. But then if that's not there, she can get downhill and facilitate and make sure, everyone is involved if they're in the right spot to make the catch and get their own opportunity. So, it takes time for point guards to get that part of their game down, especially if they can shoot the ball. So the last thing you want is a point guard that, gets us into our offense and shoots 4 or 5 shots in a row while everyone else is just, kind of trying to get to their spot, get a rebound, get back in transition defense. I think her skill, and that's come with experience, is her ability to understand when and where to attack and when we need a big shot. And just making sure that we're always in the flow. And for me, that's I think, me watching her for the period of time that I was assistant at the NBL 1 level last year, multiple practices, is that she is absolutely an unselfish hooper that just that can happen to score 50. So that to me is a rare blend for any guard, regardless of whether they're just in their early 20s or their early 30s.
Well, I mean, you've done a pretty solid job of selling Shy to me personally. I'm ready to have her on my squad. But I am interested to know, it's been a little while since she's played in the league. How do you think now at this point in her career that her game is going to translate to the WNBA and more specifically the Phoenix Mercury?
Yeah, so I've taken a pretty good look at the Phoenix Mercury roster that they're scheduled for 2025. It's young, obviously you've got Sammy Whitcomb coming into the backcourt, and if we can just sort of touch on Sammy's WNBL season, wow, she is absolutely an elite all-world guard. Her ability to get a shot, crash the boards, run the offense. She was the WNBL MVP for a reason, and the fact that the Mercury have come out and worked really hard to get her onto their roster, that's a massive signing. And obviously with the trade to bring in probably one of the best defensive bigs going around, there's the 1-2 punch there is pretty solid. But looking at the backcourt now that Diana Taurasi has retired, it got very young very, very quickly. So for me, it's about making sure that you're putting people in your backcourt that can keep you in your stuff under pressure. I think that's a pretty key. That's a pretty key part of I think the growth of the Mercury. For me, it's 2020 or 2021. I think when Shy was drafted, even though it was only 3 or 4 years ago, that's a long time in hoops, and she's been working on her game since then. So from my perspective, the international experience, Europe's pretty tough. That's a tough league. It's pretty physical. It plays by the FIBA rules where there's a lot more contact. You've got to really work to get to get your stuff. She played, was it 33 or 34 minutes a game this year in Turkey? Average 17. She's got decent assisted turnover ratio. It's a matter of getting into training camp and going up against the other 3 or 4 guards that are either rookies or first year players themselves. So I think coming out of the college system is probably a little different to playing professionally in Europe for a few years. So I'll just be interested to see the how's the best way to describe it? Sort of the hardness of her ability to deliver what the coaching staff want on the Mercury. It's a good question though. Obviously, it sounds like I'm a booster, but I'm pretty high on Shy as a baller and a person. So it's hard not to. It's certainly hard not to throw a bit of support behind her. But it's training camp, right? There's there's multiple people in that week or so that want to land themselves a professional contract. So you got to show up and you got to be ready.
And I will go ahead and say that you are not the only person that's backing Shyla for what she's shown on film. I think everybody that's in our diehard group kind of understands where I'm coming from with that.
Nice.
I gave them a little bit of a pregame prep over the past weekend ahead of this week's episode, just kind of getting their minds moving on who Shy is and the back-to-back 50-point games. One thing that stood out to me, and I kind of saw a little bit of it on film, but I would like to obviously get your perspective even more. You mentioned that you all are very similar in size and that there's a lot of switching that you get into defensively. And naturally, last season, especially with new coach Nate Tibbetts, they got into a ton of switching, especially when Brittany Griner was either out with injury or off the floor. I think that's something that they'll continue to evolve with, adding Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali to their defense to bring the versatility. How does she hold up defensively when having to switch onto bigger matchups? And how do you feel like that breadth of experience playing that style of defense will translate to the W side?
Yeah, it's tough, right? So, I've looked at the roster and Shy at 5'6" is probably on the smaller side of the of the players that are certainly on the bubble and working through the training camp process. In Australia, we don't. There are some some 6'3", 6'4" players, but on average, we usually our bigs are sort of in that 5'11" to 6'3" position. So it's probably easier for us from a game plan perspective to switch through 1 through 4, and then almost have our 5 in drops sometimes, depending on who the guard is that's coming off that pick and roll. So our switching is really important, especially in dribble handoffs. Equally in pick and roll, but certainly there's a lot of dribble handoff side action in Australian basketball at the moment. It's kind of a bit of a trend, getting guards coming off that wing and trying to turn the corner. So for us, that hard show out of a switch just to make sure that we don't give up the middle is really important. And Shy's been a part of that program. Obviously in the W, there's some bigger guards, and it's going to be tough, right? But she knows where to be on defense from a positioning perspective. Always active. She understands that sometimes she's going to be outsized, but not outworked. And that to me, I think if your height doesn't get tired, so the fact that you've got some potential mismatches means you just got to work all that harder to make sure you don't get caught behind, deep under the hoop. You got to make sure you use all your leverage that you possibly can and stay active. So I think from a switching perspective, if it's guard to guard, there shouldn't be any problem at all. Obviously, if you get into a high pick and roll and you want to switch out of a sort of a 5 spot onto a 1 spot, that's going to cause anyone in any league challenges if you're switching a sort of a 6'2", 6'3" onto a 5'8" guard. So from my perspective, it's about how the coaching staff want to run their pick and roll or their handoff action to make sure that they don't get any real mismatches with anyone getting downhill out of either slipping the screen or coming off that hard roll. So it wouldn't just be for Shy. I think it's across the board. And given the inexperience of, I think the Mercury backcourt outside Sammy, it's going to be something that the coaching staff's going to have to drill specifically across the board for that young group. Regardless, obviously, you go up against 10-year vets that have been running a pick and roll, sort of like a 4 into a 1 or a 5 into a 2. Those guys are going to hurt you either way. It's just one of those things where you just got to stay active. And from what I've seen with Shy, certainly during the 10 games or the 12 games she played for us last year, and then at practice every single week, she rarely gets in the wrong spot. So it's just going to be a size challenge, and that's certainly everyone's challenge.
I'm imagining her on the court, and especially with the way that the Mercury have added not just Alyssa Thomas but Satu Sabali, having protections within their switching if it's a 1-4 or 1-5, to where if Alyssa switched out onto a 1 on the perimeter, that Satu can come and help over and kick out or scram switch her to kind of protect and keep their matchups organized in some capacity. But to your point, like you spoke to, and I think you said it perfectly, that's something that they're certainly going to have to rep out with the template for the roster that they have right now. I imagine that's something that's part of their switching process this upcoming season. But I think just having that experience as a smaller guard and the heart that you mentioned that never tires out, that's something that's going to be a separator, especially when you get into individual competition to actually make a roster, yet alone being able to hold up on the switch for 2 seconds with, say, Asia Wilson before the scram switch can come and kind of protect the defensive shell. So I'm looking forward to just seeing how her personality vibes with players like Kalia Copper and Alyssa and Satu, because all of them kind of have the same type of competitive motor with the way that they tick. Erika, I'll pass the mic to you.
No, I mean, like you said, you had some great sound nuggets in that, specifically talking about how heart never gets tired. If I would have had that last season, I probably would have worn that phrase out.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You've given me such gifts today. But, I mean, I want to ask about Sammy one last time before we let you go. I think that we want to do her a due service. We've had people duking it out on our comments, our mentions all year, you know, who's going to be a point guard? What's the backcourt situation going to be like? And I don't think there's anyone better to kind of talk about what is possible with at least the two of the people we've discussed so far. So I just want to kind of open the floor to let you talk about what your vision would be if you were the head coach of this team with Sammy and all the things that they've got going on. And also, not to keep you a little longer than we had discussed, but what do you think the ceiling of this team is? I mean, you've watched these two particular players for quite a while, and then obviously I'm sure you've watched quite a bit of WNBA, but you know, what do you think that this team is really capable of doing this season?
It's interesting, you really don't pay as a fan, and I'm sort of the same. Is you really don't pay attention to as much attention to players that aren't on your roster until they get onto your roster, and you know, unless you've been watching Sammy Wickham play basketball for the last 10 years, and as a fan or she's on your club, you really don't understand how good she is. Like, she is elite. Her ability to play both sides of the basketball, knock down shots, run the offense. I think, I talked a little bit before about point guards trying to work out when and where to attack. Sammy's mid-30s now, and she's mastered that part. She knows when to go. She knows when to involve her teammates. She crashes the boards. She had a triple-double this year in 40 minutes in WNBL. And that's a pretty rare feat. They don't come along too often in WNBL. And she got close another couple of times, like unanimous MVP. So you've got one of the best to go around, Australian Opal. She's a vet. You got someone coming into your backcourt that can really play and can really keep people organized and is tough. Like, she plays, she could play, 45 minutes, 50 minutes into a double overtime game, and you still get the same level of effort. So I think having a really experienced point guard in the backcourt, and if you're bringing in a young group of guards to put around her, and then obviously you've got some experience in the front court, I think with anything, the vets can take you to where you need to go, but it's how the younger players are going to respond in the furnace of the full WNBA season. I'd be probably a little concerned about the experience gap between the vets and the younger players. So, for me, it's how those younger players can come on throughout the season to really contribute consistently. As you guys know, younger players, they can have a great ball game and then sort of plateau a little bit and then come back, and dealing with the rigors of being on the road and road trips and media, and like there's a whole new world when you get to that level, and it really comes down to experience. So, I think we know what we're going to get from the vets, and the ceiling for this team. The talent's there, right? It's a talented ball club, but I think it might take probably a little while for us to really understand what we're going to get out of this team, how they come together, and the fact that the club's lost arguably the greatest player in the history of women's basketball. So when you think that there's the constant thread of greatness through the club, championship winning experience, level of excellence, just that in the locker room for an extended period of time is the standard set, right? So when you're coming into training camp, what's expected because you have one of the greatest ever to do it. So it's a new look roster this year. There's been some trades. You've brought in a couple of different players. There's some younger kids. So what's the vibe going to be without the constant of certainly one of the greatest ever to do it. So I think that's a challenge for the coaching staff. So there's going to be the shadow of greatness, and podcasts like this are going to be talking about what it was like a few years ago compared to what it is now. So that adds a little bit of the pressure on top of the kids coming in. But I think from a if I'm being asked sort of what the backcourt could look like, it's pretty clear that I would love to see Shy in it. Her ability, I think, to knock down the three ball is invaluable. So when you've got someone that that can get on a heater and knock down open shots, and you got someone like Sammy Whitcomb in the backcourt that knows how to run the show, and your front line is certainly all WNBA, you're going to be in reasonably good shape from a night in, night out competitive perspective.
I really enjoyed what you mentioned about Sammy Whitcomb, the IQ, the toughness. It's funny. I feel like that is common amongst all Australian basketball players that make it to the WNBA circuit. So it's no surprise that she's cut from that exact type of cloth. I'll have one quick question on Sammy, and then I have one more follow-up for you before we get you out of here.
Of course.
With Sammy, especially in this Mercury context, I imagine her screening is going to take on even more attention than it got in her time with Seattle, being able to screen for bigs to go block to block or elbow to block, or even like inverted pick and roll with someone like Satu, or even more so Alyssa Thomas. I'm curious, did you ever see anything about Sammy from her dynamics in Australia with her screening that you felt would be very useful as a shooter to either open herself up or just cause confusion for a defense?
She's tough. Physical, balanced, rarely see her off balance or off her feet, and that to me, as a coach, you look at your players and their ability to get to spots on balance, and she gets the spots on balance. And that to me is a separator, right? So, if you need a screen set in a certain spot to get someone open, she's going to get her feet in the right spot, and that she's going to be solid on that. And then it comes to the person that's trying to get off that screen to use the gift that they've been given. And I think that's the second part of it, right? Is people can set good screens, but if the person coming off them doesn't quite know how to make the right read, then the best screen in the world all of a sudden becomes not the best screen in the world. So I think from a point guard into a screen, and either for the 4 or the 5, she's going to put her body on the line, and that's all you want from somebody who's running your offense, is not afraid to get down there and put a body on a big to get an opportunity for one of their teammates going to the basket. So she knows how to play, and that's all you can ask for someone who's going to be brought in to run your offense. So I don't think you're going to have any problems with Sammy's ability to run the offense or put her body on the line this season.
Now, my last one to round things out, back to Shyla.
Yeah.
Do you see her making the Mercury roster, and where do you think her biggest impact will be should she do actually make the roster?
So, I know we've spent sort of like 35 minutes talking about Shy. I don't want to heap more pressure on. I think now is the time for, she's a baller. And when you get the opportunity to go into a WNBA training camp, it's on you. It's on you to come in and get the job done. I would love for her to make the roster. She's a great person. She's worked hard to get where she is. Traveling the world. She's she's played in some of the toughest competitions. She's right there on the bubble for the Opals. 23 years old. Had their first experience of being drafted in the WNBA. That didn't work out. Some players be like, well, wasn't meant to be, but she stuck at it, right? So, the tenacity and the determination to be the best that she can be, I think is one of her number one qualities. So I'm not going to be in training camp, but ultimately I know she's going to knock down some shots and she's going to put some pressure on people, and I would absolutely love to see her make the roster. And an All-Australian backcourt at the Phoenix Mercury. It's going to be great for us to cover this season. That's for sure.
I was actually just going to say, it sounds like you want to come on the show a lot more times this year.
Look, I'll happily show if we have an All-Australian backcourt at the Mercury. Okay. So you guys need to help me make that happen.
I'll start the petitions. If there's anyone loud and annoying and can make something happen around here, you're looking at her. So we'll see what we can do. We'll keep you really, really updated on that whole situation during training camp. Steven's in Phoenix, so I think he'll be there quite often. I'll be making the trek up every once in a while just to see how things are going, put my eyes on the court. But fantastic. I hope that all of our people are going to be tapped in with you at basketball.com.au. And it's Peter Brown, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And anything you want to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the little shout out for basketball.com.au. Is we've just started a new website in Australia that is really focused on Australian basketballers at home and abroad. Very much the NBA and WNBA are part of what we cover every single day, and obviously with the WNBA season about to roll in. Australian basketball fans particularly, and given the amount of Australians in the WNBA across multiple clubs, will be very much focused on Australians and how they perform from a day-to-day basis. And obviously we have, the New York Liberty championship coach Sandy Brondello getting it done, who certainly started out her career at the Phoenix Mercury and then, was a championship coach. So Australia's ties with Phoenix run pretty deep. I think I did a little account before coming on the show, and we're up to about 17 Australians that have either played or been drafted by the Phoenix Mercury, including, obviously a pretty successful coach. So, Australia's ties with the Mercury in particular are really strong. So, from a basketball.com.au perspective, we're unbiased fans of the Mercury and how it's created incredible pathways for Australian hoopers, and it's given young athletes certainly the understanding that if you put the work in, there's opportunities for you to go to the next level. And I think we had more than 100 female players in the US Collegiate Div 1 system this year. More than 10 heading into 14 players in the WNBA. So the Australian women's basketball program is alive and kicking, and I would expect to see more Australians over the next few years, certainly coming through the collegiate system into the WNBA. And obviously Georgia Amor, fifth-year senior, absolutely killed it at Kentucky this year. So All-American honors, we're going okay. So I might be spending more time with you guys on more players down the line, depending on where some of our people land in the draft.
Georgia Amore is a real soft spot for me. In a lot of the draft projections, she was pegged to come to the Mercury, and now here we are, no draft picks, and Georgia Amore is coming in the draft. So it's a little bit of a touchy subject for me at this time.
Yeah,
But,
she's a super impressive young hooper, really impressive.
You talked about it with Shy in particular, but I would imagine it spreads amongst most of them that they all seem like really, really incredible people also off the court. And not that American hoopers aren't, but it's something that I have all of the Australians that have either Beck Allen last year with Mercury or whoever else, they've all just been incredible individuals.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure how to describe it. Australians in general are a pretty laid back group, but I really enjoy coaching in the women's program. It's just there's joy for competition and genuine support for each other's success, and I just think that translates certainly when some of our more elite players get to the next level. Is they just enjoy the process. It's one of those things where you get to do what you love, and the basketball programs here in Australia are a little different to the US. So we're very much club based rather than school, collegiate, high school type scenario. So rather than having high school basketball, which we do have, and then university basketball, we're very much focused on clubs. So players join a club and compete in what we call reps. So you can play under 12s through to under 18s, and then into youth league and NBL 1, NBL, and some of the elite kids, or not some, more than 100 of the elite female basketballers go to college. And if they don't make it to the next level, they come back and play NBL. So, it's probably a little different from an academics perspective. And I think, given that we're so far away, the pressure is probably a little different. Is that you can just get out and hoop and work on your game, and then opportunities present themselves. So for me, I think it's environmental, but it's really great to be around a group of young women who really enjoy playing the game and get along, and practices are fun. You sort of win together. Sometimes you lose together, but ultimately it's about them getting to play some basketball and compete for a common goal. And I think that's probably what you're sort of seeing in that. When you see the Australians come out to the US, they're a product of their environment.
Well, I, for one, have really enjoyed having you on. I hope that you will come back at least one more time, with or without the full backcourt. I hope you'll at least give us one extra go.
I don't know. I'll protest if it'll be under protest if it's not a full Australian backcourt.
I've had to withhold the protest all off season. So if I have had to do it, I need you to just come on one last time.
You got it.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad we could all come to an agreement today. I've let you plug everything. Am I forgetting anything, Stephen?
I think we did some great work with Peter today. We appreciate your time, and we certainly look forward to speaking more with you on the parameters that you provided. Maybe in the next few weeks, if not in the next couple of months.
Maybe after training camp, when we can celebrate another Australian signing for the Phoenix Mercury.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I was a little nervous. As everyone knows, I get nervous for everything, but Stephen carries the back of this podcast in ball knowledge and yapping. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? But
it's just talking hoop. It's just talking hoop. That's all.
You know how I get, Stephen, just a little antsy,
This is true.
But we do have a quick ad break to go to, so we'll get back to the Final Four and more Mercury talk right after this quick ad break. Do you play the screen? No? Okay. Well, Brandon Bills. Elevate your brand with Brandon Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitted beanies, or t-shirts, Brandon Bills has you covered with performance and style. Looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd? Brandon Bills has got you covered. They make custom apparel. They have partnerships with ASU and U of A as part of their campus collection. They're a local company out of Mesa, Arizona. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to have a quick conversation with them regarding some WNBA apparel. Might just make phone calls after this, but I have like 6 of their Arizona hats. I love all of them. I really don't wear hats other than their hats. So shout out to Brandon Bills. Head over, I want to say it's brandonbills.com. Yep. And use code PHNX for 20% off of your first order. But we've had like genuine chaos in women's basketball world this week. I feel like genuine chaos. Do you feel like it's the same way?
Absolutely. That's why it's March Madness. There's nothing normal about this time of year when it comes to basketball, whether it's the volume of basketball that's being consumed for most people, or the stakes that are in play with each game, or the drama that comes with that. This is not normal. And needless to say, the women's side of the collegiate hoops has showed out yet again.
I think we should do like a hit, or like not a hit or bust, like something that I really liked that happens this week and something I really disliked maybe that's happened this week, and then same with you. What do you think?
We can do that.
Okay. My bust is easy, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Juju with the ACL.
Yeah.
But the other side of that same token is that they still did their job and gave her the player of the year. I was a little worried. I was honestly, basketball is such a political situation all the time that I was frankly really worried that they were going to rob that girl of her player of the year award. So I was jumping up and down yesterday, to say the least. All of the Naismith player of the year, defensive player of the year, or coach of the year stayed home at a Pac-12 schools. I'm going to say it. Pac-12 schools. It's almost like it's still the most prestigious women's basketball conference in the country, even though it doesn't exist. It's tough being the best. So I just had to take a quick victory lap on Juju, because frankly, I was like having nightmares about someone else winning player of the year in her place, and then her not even being in the building. It just was never supposed to be like this. But I was pondering it. Okay, we were never supposed to get Juju and Paige versus each other in college. This was never supposed to happen. You know what I mean? Paige with her injury, and it gifted us this year, and we got the matchup between them, and I want to say November, early December. It was incredible. It delivered on all cylinders. I remember watching it with my brother. It was a really, really great game. We might get gifted another generational talent, that Juju could go toe to toe with. So I hate that I have to find the positives in this entire situation, but I am happy that they do exist.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better thumbs down to kind of look at more than the Juju injury, unfortunately. Definitely prayers up for her. I hope she's in a great mental space, and I hope she comes back even better than she left prior to the injury. So we'll definitely be keeping tabs on her and her progress back to the court whenever it is that she is available to get back. But to go a different direction, the falling out that's taking place with Notre Dame women's basketball, we don't have the information as to exactly what it is that's going on. I'll leave the speculation for those that would rather use opinions versus speak on facts that are being provided from people that are close to the situation. I'll refrain from aimlessly speaking on something that I do not have knowledge that I'm privy to. But it's not a good look. And I also will give a thumbs down to the transfer portal to an extent as well. I love the freedom for players to make decisions, but I dislike some of the parameters that these decisions are being made off of. There's a certain dynamic that you establish as an athlete when you have to go through the grind, you have to go through disappointment or coming up short, and have to stick it out with the same group of people to then find triumph the upcoming season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons after that if you have that much time. Unfortunately, players are not going through that in some situations. And for some players, it's not to the positive in terms of what's next for them in their careers. For others, it's obvious that a fit is not necessarily what's taking place with their current situation, whether it be playtime or style of play or usage. And they might be running out of time in terms of what time they do have left on the college circuit, which kind of transitions to my thumbs up, which is Hailey Van Lith and her redemption story. Everything that's taking place with her, she's silenced the noise. She's taken all of the opportunities afforded to her by Team USA basketball, as well as learned the lessons that took place from her stint with LSU, applied all of that to TCU, and you're now looking at a player who has a completely different lens that their game is being assessed from. In addition to her just generally being in a much better mental space because of the context that she's operating in with TCU. I think that's a perfect example of how the transfer portal should be used. And there's a litany of examples that I personally say I'm not the biggest fan of. I'll leave that up to that. But the other positive I also want to speak to, independent of Hailey, which salutes to her. She's in great space going into the draft this upcoming month. Other one I want to mention, and I talked about her at the end of our last episode. I feel like the name didn't necessarily ring the way that it should have, but not to victory lap at all, because that's not what I'm doing. Madison freaking Booker.
Dog. There was at one point I was watching Texas play. I don't even remember. It was the game before they played TCU, so I feels like
Tennessee.
And you're just watching her and it's automatic, you know? It doesn't even look like she has thoughts up here, you know? It's just her and the ball out there and 9 other people that happen to be in Madison Booker's way. You know what I mean? It's like a control alt Madison Booker, you know?
The game comes so easy for her. So easy. You never want to see someone get injured, but her operating without Rory Harmon for a majority of last season really put the ball in her hands more because the team needed someone to make the plays, but also attract the attention to make the plays that they need for their offense to work. And she just put on her I'll do it hat, accepted all of that attention that came with the usage, learned through the lessons with the turnovers and sometimes being a beat behind with when she's getting the ball where it needs to be. And that's all added up in real time to now Rory's back in the lineup. She's healthy. And now Madison can not only play off of Rory, but also initiate and allow for Rory to play off the ball and do some of the things that she does well when she doesn't have it in her hands. Or if teams are pressing Rory like they love to do full court, he just pitches to Madison. They get into their offense no different than they will with Rory. And Madison can make all of the plays that Rory can, but does it from a bigger height or a taller height rather, and also does it from a scorer's perspective, which attracts the defense in a different way. And I feel like that synergy that they found with this Texas group this season is largely built off of that, but also the offense is dope. It's really awesome.
Thank you.
The defense. Spearheaded by Rory, but picked up and right in tandem with that is Madison Booker. The deflections, the block shots, the switches, they just get after it. And they don't get to where they are without the playmaking, but even more so the identity stamping piece with them is everything that those two players do and bring to them defensively.
Well, and I think to me, watching them play TCU specifically, it didn't matter who was on the court for them, who their post player was. It did not matter. They were playing with the same defensive tenacity as they were at the very beginning of the game. And I don't think that there's many teams that can play. I think he plays a solid 8 players, and all of them bring the same energy. It doesn't matter what point in the game it is. And it didn't matter if they were up by 19 over TCU or by 9. Like, they were playing the exact same way. And I think that that's such an invaluable trait of a team.
Yes. Vic Schaefer is coaching. He is doing such a solid coaching job. Like, I always, when I'm having conversations with like the homies or other people that actually watch women's college basketball, which if you don't, you should, and you're late to the party, but better late than never. I always mention on either side of basketball on the collegiate level that coaching has an impact that could never be paralleled on a professional level as it does on the collegiate circuit. And Vic Schaefer and all of the buttons he's pressing, the way he's imploring for his players to play, the freedom he's giving them within their principles, within their system, is everything. And again, in addition to those two playing the way that they are, him pulling the strings that he is from the sideline for them it's been incredible. And I hate to round it out like this because I don't know if they get to the championship round. They have quite the test ahead of them. But if they do, it's going to be his best coaching job, as well as Rory playing one of her best collegiate games yet, as well as Madison bringing that the same. And I do not think it's out the realm of possibility that they get that perfect storm where Vic is pulling all of the right strings, in addition to those two players having some of, if not their best games of their collegiate careers.
And is this Rory's last year?
Yes.
That's unfortunate. I've been hearing that Texas is cooking in the transfer portal, so obviously they are going to have to replace an invaluable player in Rory Harmon, but I was hoping to get a trio. I won't say, but I was hoping. I'm sure you've heard all about my girls going here, there, and everywhere, and what trio I'm hoping for, but apparently maybe it's just a dynamic duo, you know?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
It's unfortunate that it's gonna come without Rory. But I just can't help but think back to if she did not get hurt last season, the way she was not just assisting and playing defense, those are the two things she came into the collegiate level known for. She was scoring so well to start last season. Obviously, she can get downhill and blow past anybody whenever she wants to and finish with efficiency. But she was knocking down her pull-up threes. Everybody's trying to go under screens to keep her from going to the paint. And she's just taking it like, oh, that's what y'all doing? All right, well, hold this three. Y'all still doing this? All right, I got three more for you. Y'all are still doing this? Okay, cool. I'll keep taking this until y'all stop giving it to me. And then when you stop giving it to me, now it's going to be chaos because I'm getting paint touches and I'm doing everything that's already baked into my foundation as a player. So what a collegiate career for Rory. I heard that she's playing with the brace on her knee still because Vic Schaefer won't allow for her to play without it. I hope that's true because I do, like, mentally, I understand if you had any significant or close to significant knee injury, there's a mental component that comes with not just getting back to the court and playing your own game, but also transitioning from not having a brace in some capacity on whatever the injury was. I hope she's in a space to where she doesn't have to feel like it's a crutch for her going forward and she can just be free mentally and just get back to truly being her, because I think she's a player that she's naturally probably not getting drafted in the first round, but I think she's someone that can make a W roster. And I think she's someone that can carve out a niche as one of those pesky perimeter defenders, not unlike a Jordan Canada type, where she's smaller in stature, but the way she competes, the way she defends, the way she can set the floor for an offense are ways and avenues that she can really sustain in terms of a professional career in particular.
Well, and to me, her size doesn't matter as much because of how much she's able to handle physicality, like for her size. So I don't see a lot of concern from me, who has been watching her torch my teams for the last 3 years. So firsthand, so I don't see any problem with her transitioning to the W at all. I think you're probably right. She'll have to fight tooth and nail for that first opportunity, and it might not happen this year, but I think within the next 3 years, you're seeing Rory Harmon getting meaningful minutes in the WNBA.
Most definitely. And I want to shout out Ogre for his comment about the Suns and what is defense. My only response is yes.
How are the Suns doing? I heard, didn't the Kings lose yesterday? So they got help.
I mean, you only get help if you help yourself. So they have like a 27% chance to make the play-in tournament as of I think it was as of Monday night or Tuesday, Monday night. So we'll see what they do with it.
Stephen, I remember you telling me last year about the Mercury, though. All they have to do is make the playoffs, and so they did that. They can do anything once they make it, So just dig deep, find some belief. Maybe they need to do the same thing a little bit. They need to look inward, maybe.
Yeah, that was not a one size fits all statement that I made with that. So I'll leave it at that for sure.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, we're the next time we talk, we will have had a WNBA draft that the Mercury have no picks in as of right now.
As of now, if anything changes, you better believe we'll be on it though. But as of now, I think Shyla is going to serve as a draft pick of some sorts in terms of them bringing in a young talent that eventually makes the roster and that they can kind of internally invest in. And she can kind of play a similar role to how Celeste Taylor came in and had a sparking impact last season.
I think we're going to have a really fun roster this year. I don't want to set my expectations too high. I get emotionally bought in, but I really think it's going to be, at the bare minimum, we're just going to have a really entertaining basketball season this year. And that's all you can really ask for when you have to watch all 44 games, right?
Yep. I think they punched the ticket to the dance being the playoffs. And at that point, it's just about how far in their process with chemistry and all of those things are they. And I think that heavily involved in that will be Shyla Heal, as well as obviously Sammy Wickham. And Nate Tippett's just pulling the right strings with this group of players. Another group of dogs, different from the group of dogs he had last season, but they should be able to find similar success in certain ways that he likes to operate.
Well, I'm really excited. We got Final Four this weekend, draft in 7 days.
Yeah.
Basically, we're going to be starting weekly episodes here in 2 weeks. So lock in, you guys. We
got wait. Whoa. Who you got winning the championship? No, who you got winning the championship?
Oh, it's personally, okay. I think UCLA will win. Okay. I want UConn to win. And I admit to pulling for teams all the time. And UConn is no different. My roommate will quite literally jump me if I say we don't bleed blue in this house. He'd kick me out. This is his house. He owns it. So I can't say I don't bleed blue. You know what I mean? I'll be homeless.
Yeah. And in the Final Four, it is Texas and South Carolina. And then obviously it's UConn and UCLA. So who do you have winning? UConn versus UCLA?
I think it's tough to bet against a team with Lauren Betts. Lauren is an impossible matchup. I've seen it firsthand many, 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 many times. And she's a really, really difficult player to play against. That said, Sarah Strong is also very unique. And how do you defend? And
yes,
the matchup between just those two players in particular, I don't think that Lauren's gotten a chance to really play against a player like Sarah Strong this year. And I don't think Sarah Strong, because there isn't any, has gotten a chance to play against Lauren Betts this year. And so I think that both teams, this is going to be, to me, a match of chess, not checkers. And it's going to be Gino versus Corey. I think Corey is a fantastic coach. I think Gino's resume speaks for itself. I don't have to defend that man. But I think, have you seen the Full Court Press, the 4-episode series that they did on Caitlin, Kiki, and Camilla last year?
Just clips. I never watched it in full start to finish. The
distraught that I was for UCLA upon them losing to LSU last year while watching Full Court Press, I cried. And I'm an Arizona fan. We are literally rivals, okay? And so the fact that I was crying because they lost, I think that they're going to have this chip on their shoulder. They're going to be so damn hard to beat. Just so damn hard to beat. But then you play the same side of the same token with Paige Beckers because it's like this is her last chance to do it. It's such a difficult decision. I am ultimately gonna say that I think the national championship game will be between UCLA and Texas, and I think UCLA will come on top. And you know how much I hate betting against Dawn Staley, which is why I'm glad there's no dollars involved in this. But Texas's defense versus TCU was really, really impressive. And I don't think that TCU, or I don't think South Carolina, and not that I think Texas did it comfortably, but I don't think that I don't think South Carolina wins that game as easily as Texas does. They never, I think TCU only had the lead for 28 seconds in totality. I think they probably would have spent a little more time with the lead and it would have come down to a tighter game. Texas is 12-0 in games decided by single digits. I think they would have had a better chance versus South Carolina. And I think it all comes down to the South Carolina's lack of a really, really, really prominent big. And Chloe Kitts has been incredible this year. And listen, if there's anyone that has dogged on Chloe Kitts her fair share, it's me, okay? But she's earned her flowers this year. That girl has improved tenfold of what I thought she could be as a basketball player. And I think that other people have stepped up in times, but I think that in games like these, you having a big that is just not – Joyce Edwards isn't going to get it done in the national championship, I don't think. And I think every other team, even down to UConn with Sarah Strong, and I think Sarah Strong's experience all comes down to that game versus USC in November, because Sarah Strong made some really, really big mistakes that you could argue cost them the game. I don't think that anything comes down to one or two or three or four things that one player does, but I think you could go back and watch the game and find moments where Sarah Strong kind of does some things that gives USC a better chance to win the game. But I think she learned so much, so I don't think she does that again. I just think that the seniority that comes with the three teams outside of South Carolina is something that is really notable in this particular tournament. And that's not to say that South Carolina doesn't have vets. It's just not the same level of vets, in my opinion, as everyone else. And, you know, I'm a pow stan, you know, I'm a Raven Johnson defender till the day I die. But I just think that the size and I hate to say it, the girthiness of these three other teams are just going to get it done in the final stretch here.
So to confirm, you got UCLA versus Texas, and you have UCLA winning it all.
And I just also gave you about a zillion reasons that could be untrue, but yes.
Okay. This is tricky for me. All of these teams are so good. I think all of them have cases that if you told me they won and they did X, Y, Z, and ABC, I would be like, I can see it. I can see it 1,000%. That being said, though, Paige Bueckers has been the best player in the national tournament, and it's been not even close. It's been her and then whoever else you might think is second. You got to put like 7 or 8 dots before you get to that number 2 spot, because she is on a different level right now. The efficiency, the defense, the playmaking, the feel she has for her team, and the buttons that she's pressing on the court, her being in sync with Gino Auriemma from the sideline as well. She is in a different space right now, and I don't know if anybody can throw her off her rhythm enough for it to sway a game out of UConn's favor. However, if there is the team that is able to slow it down and be able to kind of play a game on their terms, maybe a little bit more than UConn has had to do against any of their other opponents in the tournament, it will be them. I still have Paige coming out of this as potentially a champion. I'll get to the other side in a second, but I do think that this is going to be a game that comes down to who scores more points. I know that's the name of the game, but it's literally going to come down to who can probably knock down more threes and kind of control the game from the perimeter more than it is in the paint.
And Caitlin Chen is going to go crazy in this game.
Probably will. She probably will. But I think Paige is the best player in that matchup. I think she's going to have enough star power to push it across the finish line for UConn. And then we get to the other side, whereas Texas, who I've spoken ad nauseum about the last 2 episodes, and Dawn freaking Staley, who finds her way into yet another Final Four. And I will not allow for that to be lost on anybody's ears or attention if watching college basketball. That is greatness. It's going to be hard to get to that same level that UConn's at, because that's literal decades. But Dawn is certainly more on that trajectory than any other program with her in South Carolina. And I think they need to start being looked at in that same light, because she's done it across multiple iterations and sent how many all-stars and Team USA caliber players to the professional level of basketball. Like, how many times do you have to do something for people to generally start to believe, okay, this is not a fluke? Guess it ain't luck if the luck is showing up every verse, every step, every season. That's what Dawn is. There's something a little different about that team this season, though. And I'm not saying it's something that's going to be fatal for them, but I think it's something that opponents can poke at a little bit more. And if there's any team that's going to find a way to poke at that little bit of a weakness, that little bit of a blemish, it's going to be that Texas team that I just got done speaking to. I do think that Texas is going to find a way to get the win. But if they do so, it's going to come off the strength of, like I mentioned, the three pillars that I spoke to: Vic Schaefer, Madison Booker, and Rory Hartman. They have the work cut out for them. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say that they make it happen. So you get to the championship round. Paige Beckers, Madison Booker, Vic Schaefer, Gino Auriemma.
I kind of don't like two men things, so maybe we just don't talk about that, We'll just
Heard. Then we'll keep it to the players then. That's tough. I imagine Rory is going to be all over Paige. That is going to be so much fun because Paige loves to use screens and pick and roll and also work off the screens off the ball. Rory just does not care about a screen more often than not. She'll pick you up full court. She'll navigate those screens. And if she does happen to get clipped, she'll compete well enough to get back into the play to where you still feel her presence, even if it is her being from behind versus in front from her natural defensive position. I would love to just watch that matchup. Just those two. That alone.
I just want to say, I'm so excited for these last games, but only 3 more. That's it.
Yeah, it's tough. That's tough.
This is the worst part about it all. Is okay, now we have to wait 8 months to watch college basketball again.
It's tough.
It's just criminal.
So many storylines swirling around, and everything that March is. I'll ultimately think that it is going to be Paige. She is on a tear. She has been the best player. I think she continues to be that through the Final Four into the championship round. And UConn wins yet another national championship under Gino Auriemma.
At least DT and Sue won't be able to tell Paige she's not great, I don't want to hear this "you ain't got no ring" nonsense. You know what I mean?
Well, when you have multiple and all you know is win, 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 win.
I know.
You tend to look at things a little differently. You have a different bar that people have to reach. Hence why a player like Candace Parker doesn't allow for anybody that doesn't have something that she has in terms of accolades to grace her podcast. That's no different than the lens that players like DT and Sue are looking at the people that are coming through the culture that they helped to establish with UConn. So I'm not mad at them about it. I do think that you can look at players and assess greatness without having one at the highest level, because there's only one champion every year. That doesn't mean that everybody else was a failure.
And one
that
year
just
they
means that
skipped the championship.
Exactly. That just means that one person's star shined a little bit brighter, one team's star shined a little bit brighter than the rest of the field. But I will never knock them for the lens that they look at the game through, because they've done it, and they've done it time and time again at every single level, internationally, professionally, collegiately, on the high school level. That's all they know is winning. So I can't be mad at winners for looking at it, from the lens of a win. I think Paige is going to be able to kind of flash the ring and say, all right, can we talk now? What's up?
Only freshman to ever win National Player of the Year and national champion,
No one else has done it.
Well, I'm pretty excited. We got a weekend full of hoops headed toward our way. And then next week, literally the draft is in no time at all. Prep yourselves. Be prepared to relearn the entire WNBA roster list in about 20 days. And then once training camp's over, to relearn them a third time this year. I'm super stoked. It's going to be a really fun season. Steven and I are going to be hitting you with all the coverage. I think, not to toot our own horn, but I fear this year is going to be tenfold better than last year, because you're here in town. Obviously, right now we're in a little bit of a unique situation, so maybe I shouldn't call it out too much, but we're going to be at every game together, doing videos from the court after. We got plans to make some things happen this year, and I think you guys are going to be really excited for what we have coming your way.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to covering Mercury games in person more consistently this upcoming season, and looking forward to just bringing y'all more coverage that this team has deserved for quite some time. And you'll be getting that and then some from PHNX. So for everybody that's been tapped in for quite some time, you all are as good with your stock and investing as possible. For all of the newcomers, we appreciate y'all as well. Let's lock in. Let's get to it.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Erika Day. this guy at Steven PG3, and our beat account at PHNX_Mercury. We will be back with another episode in 2 weeks. And listen, after this next episode, we're back weekly. Get locked in, guys, because I mean, you're gonna see our faces. I know you guys already see Steven's face every day on the Sun Show, but like, I feel a little left out. So I'm gonna come back to the party weekly. So look forward to that. I'm super excited, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks.
We all silly like the mayor.